Brock Lesnar just got disrespected in WWE's most dangerous faction is about to explode. The power structure that Brock Lesnar thought he controlled just crumbled right in front of his face, and what Bronson Reed said to the Beast incarnate on live television should terrify everyone about what's coming next. The massive powerhouse who was supposed to be Brock's loyal enforcer just publicly rejected Lesnar's leadership in the most disrespectful way imaginable, and the tension backstage right now is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Before I break down every word of Bronson Reed's shocking verbal warning and expose why this rebellion was inevitable, answer me this: is Bronson Reed making the biggest mistake of his career by challenging Brock Lesnar's authority? Or is he about to become the breakout star of 2025? Drop your answer in the comments, because what Reed just did is either career suicide or the smartest power play WWE has seen in years. The faction that Brock Lesnar assembled was supposed to be unstoppable, a collection of the most dangerous and physically dominant superstars in WWE united under Brock's leadership to reshape the company in their image. Bronson Reed was positioned as the muscle, the enforcer who would handle the dirty work, while Brock maintained his status as the alpha and ultimate decision-maker. For weeks, this arrangement seemed to be working perfectly, with Reed following Brock's directions and helping the faction demolish everyone who stood against them. But beneath the surface, tension had been building, resentment had been festering, and last night it all exploded in the most public and devastating way possible. The confrontation happened during a backstage segment that was supposed to be a simple strategy meeting. Brock Lesnar was laying out plans for their next series of attacks, delegating responsibilities, and making it clear that his word was law within the faction. Bronson Reed was standing in the back of the group, and anyone paying attention could see his body language shifting from neutral to agitated as Brock continued talking. Reed's jaw was clenched, his fists were tightening, and his eyes had the dangerous look that anyone who's watched him destroy opponents in the ring knows means someone's about to get hurt. The camera caught all of this, and in retrospect it's obvious that Reed was reaching a breaking point. When Brock finished outlining his plans and asked if everyone understood their roles, the room went silent. Everyone nodded or verbally confirmed except Bronson Reed, who just stood there staring at Brock with an expression that mixed contempt with barely controlled rage. Brock, not used to being challenged or questioned, asked Reed directly if there was a problem. And that's when Bronson Reed unleashed the verbal assault that's now being replayed on every wrestling news site and social media platform worldwide. Quick question for you: what's the most disrespectful thing one wrestler has ever said to another in a backstage confrontation? Comment below, because Reed's words to Lesnar might have just topped every previous example. Bronson Reed stepped forward, looked Brock Lesnar directly in his eyes without a trace of fear or hesitation, and said the words that changed everything: "You're not our leader, Brock. You've never been our leader. You're just the guy with the biggest name who walked in here and assumed everyone would follow you because of your reputation. But I don't care about your reputation. I don't care about your UFC career or your conquests or how many times you've main event WrestleMania. All I see is someone who's been coasting on past accomplishments while I've been doing all the real work, and I'm done pretending you're something special." The silence that followed those words was deafening and terrifying. Everyone in that room knew they were witnessing a moment that would have massive consequences. Brock Lesnar's face transformed from its usual stoic intensity to something darker, something that suggested genuine anger rather than the worked aggression he usually displays. His hands curled into fists, his breathing became heavier, and for several seconds everyone thought Brock was going to physically attack Reed right there on camera. But Bronson didn't flinch, didn't back down, didn't show even a hint of the fear that Brock is used to seeing in people's eyes when he gets angry. The specific criticisms that Bronson Reed leveled against Brock Lesnar cut deep because they exposed truths that people have been thinking but were too scared to say out loud. Reed talked about how Brock shows up to work maybe twice a month while everyone else is grinding every single week. He pointed out that Brock gets paid millions for part-time work while full-time wrestlers like Reed are making a fraction of that despite working 10 times as hard. He mentioned how Brock's leadership consists of barking orders and taking credit for victories that other people's hard work actually achieved. Every word was calculated to not just challenge Brock's authority but to completely delegitimize it in front of the entire faction. Do you think Bronson Reed's criticisms of Brock's part-time status are valid, or should Brock's legendary status command automatic respect? Let me know in the comments. The other faction members' reactions revealed the deep divisions that had apparently been hidden beneath the surface. Some people were nodding slightly as Reed spoke, suggesting they agreed with his criticisms even if they didn't have the courage to voice them. Others looked uncomfortable, torn between loyalty to Brock and recognition that Reed was speaking truths they'd been thinking. A few seemed genuinely shocked, as if they'd never considered questioning Brock's leadership and were only now realizing that maybe they should have. The faction that appeared united and dangerous just hours before was now obviously fractured, with allegiances being tested and everyone forced to choose sides in a conflict that was erupting right in front of them. Bronson Reed's declaration of independence went beyond just challenging Brock's leadership. He outlined an alternative vision for what the faction could be, painting a picture of a group that operates democratically rather than as Brock's personal army. Reed talked about making decisions collectively, about everyone having equal say in strategy and targets, about splitting any financial opportunities equally rather than having Brock take the lion's share. It was a revolutionary message that appealed to people's desire for fairness and recognition, but it was also a direct threat to the power structure that Brock had established. If Reed's vision gained traction, Brock would go from being the undisputed leader to potentially being voted out of his own faction. Brock Lesnar's response, when it finally came, was chilling in its simplicity and threat level. He stepped within inches of Bronson Reed's face and said in a low, dangerous voice that the microphones barely picked up, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, and I'm going to enjoy ending your career slowly and painfully." It wasn't a worked promo designed to generate heat. It sounded like a genuine promise from someone who has the size, skill, and legitimate fighting background to make good on that threat. Reed's response was equally intense, saying, "Bring it whenever you're ready, old man. I'll be the one who finally exposes you as the overrated has-been you've become." The personal nature of these insults, going beyond typical wrestling trash talk into genuine disrespect, suggested this conflict was rooted in real animosity rather than scripted drama. The backstage reaction to this confrontation has been enormous and divided. Veterans who remember Brock's dominance at his peak are shocked that anyone would dare challenge him so directly and publicly. Their warning read that he's crossed a line that can't be uncrossed and that Brock's retaliation will be severe. Younger wrestlers who relate to Reed's frustrations about part-timers getting opportunities while full-timers grind are quietly supporting his stance, though most are too smart to say so publicly. The locker room is essentially divided between the old guard who believe respect for legends is paramount and the new generation who believe you should only respect what someone does currently, not what they accomplished years ago. What's your take on the respect debate? Should legends automatically get deference, or do they need to earn respect through current performance? Share your perspective in the comments section. Paul Heyman's involvement in this situation adds another fascinating layer to an already complex scenario. Heyman has been advising Brock for years and has a vested interest in maintaining Brock's dominant position. But Heyman is also a political operator who always backs the winning horse, and if he perceives that Bronson Reed's rebellion has momentum and might succeed, Heyman could easily shift his allegiance. Multiple sources report that Heyman has been having private conversations with Reed, ostensibly to convince him to apologize and submit to Brock's authority, but some people suspect Heyman might actually be playing both sides and preparing to jump ship if Reed's uprising gains enough support within the faction. Can you remember another time Paul Heyman betrayed someone he'd been advising? Drop examples in the comments because Heyman's loyalty is always questionable. The physical confrontation that everyone's anticipating hasn't happened yet, and that's almost more terrifying than if they'd already fought. Brock and Bronson are circling each other like predators, each waiting for the perfect moment to strike, each trying to gather allies and strengthen their position before the inevitable explosion. WWE management is reportedly trying to keep them separated to prevent a backstage brawl that could result in injuries before any match can be scheduled, but controlling two 300-pound men who want to hurt each other is nearly impossible. The tension is so high that people backstage are genuinely nervous about being caught in the crossfire when these two finally collide. The match implications and potential booking of a Brock Lesnar vs. Bronson Reed feud have fans and analysts equally excited and concerned. On paper, it's a dream match between two of the most physically imposing performers in WWE history. The visual of these two behemoths colliding would be spectacular, but there's legitimate concern about whether WWE will book Reed strong enough to make the feud feel competitive, or whether this will be another example of a younger star being fed to Brock to maintain his mystique. Reed's entire credibility as a threat depends on WWE treating him as a legitimate equal to Lesnar rather than just a stepping stone challenger who gets destroyed to put Brock over. What's your prediction? Will WWE actually let Bronson Reed beat Brock Lesnar, or is this just another sacrifice to the part-timer? Comment your booking prediction below. The promo possibilities in this feud are enormous because both men have legitimate grievances and contrasting styles that could create compelling television. Brock can lean into his legendary status, talking about his accomplishments and questioning what Reed has ever done to deserve challenging him. Reed can continue hammering on the themes of hard work versus name recognition, full-time dedication versus part-time appearances, and the need for WWE to evolve beyond relying on stars from a previous era. The generational conflict aspect of this feud taps into real tensions within WWE and the broader wrestling industry about how much space veterans should occupy versus opportunities for rising stars. Social media reaction has been overwhelmingly supportive of Bronson Reed, which should tell WWE something important about what their audience wants to see. Fans are tired of part-timers taking spots from full-time wrestlers. They're frustrated with the same old names being pushed while talented performers like Reed struggle to get meaningful screen time. Reed's rebellion against Brock is resonating because it reflects fan sentiments that have been building for years. The hashtag Reed is right has been trending, with thousands of people expressing support for his stance and eagerness to see him actually defeat Brock rather than just being used to make the legend look good. WWE would be foolish to ignore this groundswell of support by booking Reed to lose decisively. The financial implications of this feud could be significant depending on how WWE chooses to handle it. A properly built Brock vs. Reed match could be a pay-per-view main event that generates substantial revenue. but only if WWE commits to making Reed look like a legitimate threat rather than just another victim. If fans believe Reed has a real chance to win, they'll invest emotionally and financially in the outcome. If it feels like another predetermined Brock victory, people won't care enough to pay premium prices to watch. WWE's willingness to actually elevate Reed in this feud will determine whether it's a financial success or a missed opportunity that could have been something special. The faction's future hangs in the balance as everyone waits to see how this power struggle resolves. If Brock reasserts his dominance by destroying Reed, the faction will likely continue under his leadership but with lingering resentment and fear rather than loyalty. If Reed somehow emerges victorious or even just holds his own, the faction could splinter completely with different members choosing different sides. There's even the possibility of the faction evolving into a democracy like Reed proposed, though that would require Brock either accepting a diminished role or being completely removed from the group. Each possible outcome leads to different storytelling directions that could define WWE programming for months. The historical context of younger wrestlers challenging established legends is filled with cautionary tales and rare successes. For every Stone Cold Steve Austin who successfully dethroned the previous generation, there are dozens of wrestlers who challenged legends, lost decisively, and never recovered their momentum. Bronson Reed is at a career crossroads where the outcome of this Brock feud will largely determine whether he becomes a main event player or remains a talented mid-carder who had one moment of courage that didn't pay off. The stakes couldn't be higher for Reed personally, which adds genuine drama to this situation beyond the typical work storyline tension. The training and preparation that would be required for a competitive match between these two is substantial and interesting. Brock Lesnar, despite being part-time, maintains an incredible physical condition and has legitimate combat sports experience that makes him dangerous in any physical confrontation. Bronson Reed would need to be in the absolute best shape of his life and possibly train with combat sports specialists to make a fight between them look believable. The physical preparation both men would undergo just to protect themselves and deliver a quality match would be intense enough to be its own documentary, showing the real work that goes into creating the illusion of combat between two legitimate tough guys. So here's my final question, and I want passionate responses on this. Is Bronson Reed a hero for standing up to Brock Lesnar and speaking truths about part-timers taking opportunities from full-time wrestlers? Or is he a disrespectful upstart who doesn't understand that legends like Brock have earned the right to lead? And more importantly, who would win in a legitimate fight between these two massive humans? Get in those comments right now and make your voice heard, because Bronson Reed just declared war on one of the most dangerous men in WWE history, and what happens next will either make him a star or end his career in the most brutal way imaginable.